This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. He'll have me while they're singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for July 26, 2022. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find this podcast on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or our own dedicated podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on Twitter at OpenVoiceGate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You can set up a one-time or recurring donation just if you click the red box that says sponsor this podcast. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside, as always, Case Low. In case, I don't think we were planning on recording tonight.
No, I certainly was planning on having the night off.
Yeah, so as you all probably have seen through the podcast feed, it's kind of becoming an annual thing, a show with Jay that came out yesterday that probably would have come out today. But yesterday, let me get the time right, just because the time matters with this case. Yesterday at approximately, I have the exact time, at 1:19 a.m. Japanese time, Dragongate announced the departure of Kaito Ishida as of the 24th, stating that efforts were made to come to a compromise, but ultimately he was firm in his decision to resign from the company. This announcement's being made as per his request. That's why there's no press conference. This seemed to be it for it. And his last match case was in Okinawa back in June and has been off cards ever since. Okay, I'm just trying, but part of today's show, we're going to be talking about this, and we'll talk about Kobe World, but this is just close to a moon landing kind of thing case. I didn't hear anything for a long time injury-wise about Kaito Ishida, but this is something that I think it's fair to say that this was not like a sudden thing with Kaito Ishida, is what I'm.
It wasn't the most shocking name that could have departed from the Dragongate roster. I wasn't necessarily expecting it at this point in time, but when I read it, once I got past the initial, oh wow, it sunk in pretty fast. You know, he's always been, from what I've heard from people that have interacted with him, you know, he's a pretty elusive guy. He's pretty quiet. He's not the most social figure. We reported last June, just over a year ago, that there was a possibility that he was leaving the promotion, and that was based off of him posting an Instagram story with a vague phrasing of the next chapter or onto something new, whatever it was. And don't quote me on that. That was just I'm certainly paraphrasing when I talk about what its caption was, but it was that mixed with the Japanese people that I follow on Twitter, which is not a great sample size to base anything off of. But as soon as Ishida fired off that post, they were all under the assumption that he was leaving the promotion. And we said there is certainly a possibility that there's smoke to this fire. If there was a guy that was going to leave Dragongate, there's a list of alternate promotions that would make sense for him. You know, if we found out, or rather if there were rumors that UT wanted to leave, I don't know if that would make a ton of sense. I don't see landing destinations for UT outside of Dragongate. Ishida, on the other hand, there's a few, and there's one really logical one. So we at least floated it out there that, hey, there might be something to this. That turned out to be a smokescreen storyline for him getting a minor knee operation. He was back before Kobe World and a featured player for the next 11 months. And then we found ourselves here with him disappearing off of cards after the Okinawa trip. We were told, hey, it's an injury. He'll be back whenever he's healthy. And it looks like we will not see that return.
Yeah, and it was something that just from people I've talked with and people that I wouldn't say know him, but it's something that talk about his unhappiness cropped up a long time ago. Like that last year, like there was a reason why we pursued it at the time and looked into it, because it was something that lined up there, and it's something that I would say that like getting like straight like to it, I very much get the sense that the isolated and a personal thing about him leaving.
Yeah, whatever we've heard about Ishida, and it's always, nobody's ever come to us running and said, Kaito Ishida did this or we heard this. It's always just been in passing. There's some discontent there. He's a bit of a standoffish guy. It's never been Ishida has a problem with this guy and he's going to let people
Right.
know about it. Now, part of that might just be a cultural thing, but at least from the information that we've gathered, not only over the past day or two, but just over covering this promotion the way we have, I don't know of a specific issue. I don't know what the powder keg was here, but Ishida has seemingly felt unhappy for a while. And again, to reiterate my point that I opened up the podcast with, was it shocking to read a little bit? But once I thought about it, it seemed like this had been brewing for a long time. And to think about what we talked about with Jay, it seemed like at the start of 2022, this was going to be a year for him and a year for Eita. Whether they were apart or together, we didn't know in January and February. They split them up, and Eita, has been really doing his own thing, and from what I can gather, has had immense creative freedom by running with Peros. And Ishida, for as talented as he is and for as over as he was, which is something that we can kind of dive into in a second, he was in a unit that was based around Coach Minoura and alongside Naruki Doi. And no matter what, right now, given the landscape of Dragongate, that is going to put you third fiddle in a unit. And then you factor in the importance and attention given to Minorita, and all of a sudden, Nishida's the fourth and final guy in his unit. And I can see how after the 2019 to 2021 stretch that he had, I could see how that would get under his skin. Now, again, I'm not reporting that he had creative issues specifically, but I can at least understand if he did where he's coming from.
Right. Yeah. Like, to be clear on this, and this is something that should be said and should be very clear. We have not talked to Kaito Ishida. We need to hear back from various people about this. And going back and talking about like Gold Class and about all of this and his position within Gold Class in a lot of ways, like from him joining up with Doi and Minoura all the way throughout, he kind of was the sore thumb in a lot of ways, because you had Doi's like Fascination early on with the 90% women in attendance thing, and then you had Kaito Ishida that was like trying to say heelish things, and it was just like, okay, storyline that's like makes sense, and it didn't really get much further from there. And I would not be surprised when we were talking with Jay on Sunday, okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of the confusion about Gold Class was from the start the way that Kaito Ishida presented himself in comparison to the other.
Yeah, it was an odd fit from the start, and I was probably the biggest Gold Class cheerleader for the first 2 months of this promotion. I mean, I saw what they did at Champion Gate in Osaka this year, that Gold Class versus Natural Vibes match for the Dragongate belts, which was, Ishida, Doi, and Minoura. And for as odd as all of those pieces were individually, together, I was like, oh my God, they really have something here. This is a special group of guys because they're all world-class talents. And Gold Class is one of those things that in the moment, the longer it's gone on, it's been more and more confusing. And I think as time goes on, you and I will both only look back at Gold Class with question marks. It seems like, a unit that is 4 or 5 months old at this point has already overstayed their welcome, and that's a very rare thing for Dragongate. Very rarely does it seem like they miss to this degree, and maybe we're not as negative on it if the go-home angle for the July Corkin delivers to any degree instead of flopping the way that it did. But right now, they're a unit gasping for air, and to lose a piece like Ishida, again, a guy that mattered in this promotion, somebody that we always said was probably never going to be a Dreamgate champion, but certainly a credible Dreamgate challenger. And there's one Dreamgate challenge, he showed just that. This is a guy who we argued for the first half of 2020 at the start of the year through the empty arena pandemic shows. We were like, hey, with all due respect to Eita, why is this not Kaito Ishida's unit? How is he not leading RED at this point? He's the guy that is making this machine go forward. And this was the first time, and we'll kind of go through his career, but really since he put the pieces together late 2018, early 2019, these last few months are the first time that he has really been slowed in his progression. And it was obvious, and it was jarring, and it was disappointing as somebody that's a fan of him and somebody that thought he could really be a difference maker at some point for Dragongate.
So you hit on a couple things there that I wanted to touch on before we start talking about his time in Dragongate. And first and foremost, you brought up the July Cork, and of course referring to Kota Minoura's lights out attack and the no contest that came out of that I wonder about this, because it's not just that Ishida was like absent. Ishida, like after that show in Okinawa, he's just not been in cards. He has not shown up things, not been in listings. He's just like that there. If things were going, if Ishida was like, if it was something that the company was like aware, is like, all right, we probably need to prepare for something. Maybe the turn, and I'm not trying to excuse the angle, to be clear. Maybe this was taking advantage of the situation of, well, we're going to have to do something with these guys now, especially if Minoura now, given what's going to be coming down the pipe. So we might as well do this now. And then in retrospect, it will be a lot tidier than if we had to figure things out right after Kobe World with Gold.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. It's, again, like I said, it's a confusing situation. I don't remember the last time that the company has missed with a featured act the way this was. And we'll talk about Overgeneration. This won't be the Overgeneration retrospective podcast, but we'll talk about Overgeneration and how as time went on, it went, okay, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. And it seemed like somehow from May to June, the plot was lost with Gold Class, and here we are.
Yeah, so we're now 5 days out. The announcement of this is something I wanted to hit on, Case, for a second before we moved on.
Yeah, please.
Released at 1 a.m. in the middle of the night, right after you announced your Kobe World cards. That's it's something that I think it was kind of like handled in a way that it was released at a time of like, yeah, no, he's leaving. And whereas we've seen before with like Gamma, Super Shisa, and others, that it was more of a front-facing, for lack of a better terms, a more of a, all right, these guys, they're wrapping up here like this. Instead, we got that. And that ties into the fact that, and I know that it's not necessarily like one-to-one and everyone is different. Dragongate's like contractual thing for the longest time ran from Kobe World to Kobe World. And that makes me wonder if his contract, if he basically was someone who just went home and was like, all right, when my contract expires, I'm not renewing it, and that's that, and we walk away then. I just wonder. I have no indication whatsoever. So I just wanted your thoughts on it.
Well, the announcement certainly wasn't a positive one. And it's not that I think there's, just to throw a name out there, just to paint a picture, I don't think there's necessarily Shima level tension between Dragongate and Nishida, but it's not one where I would expect him to stroll back in at some point over the next year or even the year after. And it certainly caught my eye that he has announced that he is no longer a member of the roster. And then here comes Gamma, of all people, promoting his retirement show on August 14th. And it's going to be Shima and Gamma against Kazuma Sakamoto and X. And, part of the reason we investigated Ishida leaving Dragongate last year so heavily was that he is one of the few guys that realistically Dragongate to GLEAT would make sense given his relationship with Takahiro Yamamura specifically. But you look at the guys that Shima took with him when he split, and it's Lindemann, and it's T-Hawk, and it's Yamamura. And in the case of Lindemann and Yamamura, those were over-generation guys that obviously spent a lot of time with Shima, now by proxy Gamma. Do I think they're blood brothers that we don't know about? No, but Shima does have a history of specifically poaching guys from that unit, and Ishida fits that bill.
And I mean, I know that this is something that I'm certain I could go back to 2019. My date might be wrong here, but when Kaito Ishida won the Brave Gate title, Takahiro Yamamura at this time, at least with relations, said like, I wanted to congratulate my friend for his great accomplishment, basically. Like, and it was very easily inferred. Everyone knew who he was talking about. It was Kaito Ishida. So, blood brothers, couldn't tell you, but a close friendship that seems to have like that has endured after the Strong Heart split.
And perhaps wrestling isn't his next move. He has, correct me if I'm wrong, but he has a kickboxing pedigree, correct?
I don't know exactly how he was trained in kickboxing and like if he's done any amateur or anything like that, but that he is someone that, like, when we talk about Ishida's future, like if someone like you brought up UT, we're just going to use UT because he's a perfect example. There's really only like two places that UT could end up at if he leaves Dragongate. With Ishida, very likely, it could be very possible that he decides, all right, I'm in my mid to late 20s. I did this for close to a decade of my life. I'm ready to move on and go into kickboxing or go do something else. Like I mean, look at Katoka. Just now announced his 7th gym and a newborn son.
Yeah, I was going to say also the birth of his first child. How about that?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit a certain age, and especially like I feel like that's a case within this roster that you get towards the end of your 20s or 30s. Like, I mean, think about like Shohei Sato, and when he retired, I was like, think about like where you are in your life and where you were like at different times,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
who's to say?
Now, whenever a free agent becomes available in the Japanese space, people always point to New Japan. I personally don't see an in there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm skeptical.
There's an ins there. There's Shingo. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just out to lunch here. I don't see New Japan going, you know what we really need right now? Kaito Ishida. And I love Ishida, and I'd book him tomorrow if I was a promoter. I don't see that being the move. I think GLEAT makes a little bit more sense. I think he can be a top dog there, whereas, and this is sort of the story of his career, was, he was never supposed to get to the heights that he got to. Yamamura was the prize pupil from, the dojo in 2015 with him and Ishida. They took so long to find their footing that Ben-K and Yoshioka and Skywalker, overtook them on the card when they debuted a year later. And it wasn't until Maximum that Ishida really found his footing. He was a guy that got overlooked and overpassed and was a bit of a slow developer. And we saw, like I said, we saw the peak of his career. It was him challenging Skywalker for the Dreamgate in Osaka last year. And that was, in my top 10 matches of the year last year, was my number 2 Dragongate match. But that is as high as he was going to get. He was going to lose in a Dreamgate match. He could walk into GLEAT tomorrow and take that hubcap off of El Lindemann's waist and immediately become the top dog. And given the financial backing that he have, and I don't know this for sure, but I would think there's a realistic chance that he'd get a healthy payday for it.
It's something like when we talk about Kaito Ishida leaving, and I think this is like a good time to kind of transition to this. Like what Dragongate is losing in a lot of ways, and I think it's worth talking about because we did this rewind a couple months back, is he was someone that before his heel turn was getting legitimate groundswell pre-COVID. He was someone that out of people of his generation around it, you looked at him, and especially in his hometown of Osaka, and I don't know if he was a draw or not, but you could hear the crowd difference with him, and it was the crowd sounded different for him than they did for like Dragon Dia, for example. And that's lost. And that's something that, if you were to take it into GLEAT, who's to say that that's a new group of fans that did not come over when GLEAT formed? Like there's a lot there that could be lost with him that might not, that Dragon Gate might not miss as much, but other companies like GLEAT really could benefit from.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. That, him being over to a sneaky degree and him being over as a baby face, whether he was with Maximum or we only saw a few months of him with crowds that could cheer when he was in RED, but it was something that carried over. And when we rewatched the rookie ranking tournament earlier this year, 3 years on from January of 2019 to now, that was the point that I think you and I both really wanted to make on this podcast, was like, hey, it's been 2 years since we've heard voices in these buildings. You might forget that there was such a groundswell of support for Ishida before he was Brave Gate champion, before he unveiled himself to be the Green Demon Mask, before he was in RED. He was becoming a guy, and throughout 2019 and teaming with Doi and being in more and more high profile positions, we saw that, and we saw him delivering in those spots. So again, they're not losing a Yamato or a Skywalker or a Dragon Kid. This is a loss that's probably going to hurt them more in the short term than in the long term, because the narrative of Dragon Gate right now, and rightfully so, is, God, they're dropping like flies. They lost rookies. Now they've lost Ishida. Do I think it's as dramatic as 2018? No, I do not. Although those situations are certainly starting to mirror each other, where we went into this year going, look at all these rookies. Dragon Gate is set for life, and one by one they've fallen off, and then you see some bigger stars exit the scene as well. Unless, I don't know what the accurate comp would be. If Yamato and Shun Skywalker and Takuma Fujiwara and SB Kento leave and start their own promotion tomorrow, we have great cause to be concerned. Then we're entering 2018 territory. For now, it's an unfortunate blow after an unfortunate blow. I think as time goes on, that Ishida void will be able to be filled. But right now, it's hurting an already open wound.
Yeah, it's something that I largely co-sign with what you're saying there, that it looks bad, and perception-wise, there's no way anyone can ever spin it into a good thing, of course. But like when you look at how things have shooken out for them in 2022, with people leaving the promotion, for the most part, it's not like all for similar reasons, or when you see people walk out or don't renew before this, it's half of them are too old, half of them didn't really get their career going, and then Kaito Ishida is kind of the roster member that's leaving. There are certain ways to read this that if you take them as isolated incidents, it doesn't even come close to 20.
No, because you lost Shima, who was either Yamato or Dragon Kid or KZ, whatever figurehead you want to throw on there. You lose him. You lose T-Hawk, who at that point I think the equivalent would probably in many ways be losing Coach Minoura, which is a strange realization to come to. But given the way these main event pushes have gone right before Kobe World, unfortunately, Minoura sort of echoes what T-Hawk was in 2017. And then, even though Yamamura was hurt, that's losing a Fujiwara type. And then you have Lindemann, who was, losing an SB Kento or Hyo or, a Kamei or a Jason Lee, somebody like that. So they're in decent shape. But again, the perception right now is that they're bleeding. And and there's certainly an open wound, but I don't think they're in grave danger at this point in time.
Yeah, it's something that I'll be interested to see coming out of. I get a feeling it's like, let's get through this weekend, and that definitely was a feeling that I've picked up over the last week or so. Is we're going to try to get through Kobe World with everything going on. COVID's booming back over there. A lot of things are happening on these cards, and then I mean, you look at now gold class 3 members. That dog doesn't hunt. You either have to completely change it or kill it. High end, you're probably going to change it or kill it. Like it's something that those are August problems, and I feel like that it's going to be like this until the shows start up again after the Kobe World Vacation. I'm trying to get the exact date on because they do take it's only a week this year. So by the time they're back in Hiroshima on Saturday after the 31st, we'll probably get a better sense of that. And I mean, then they're right back into Corkin on the 10th. So not a long break this year, Case. Now that I'm looking at it, it's less than a week. Usually you used to get 2 weeks off after Kobe World.
They don't need time off after the week and a half they were absent post Okinawa. The best thing they can do is crush it in Kobe and then build on that momentum as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And I don't have any more in the moment thoughts. Should we start talking about the overall career of Kaito Ishida, unless you had anything else you wanted to touch on before we moved on?
No, I wanted to just kind of go through his career because this will be the last time we talk about Ishida for a while unless there's any immediate developments. And I think he's a fascinating guy to look at. And just sort of big picture, you think about the 7 years, almost exactly, that Kaito Ishida spent in DG. I'm going to put you in an odd position, very open-ended question, but what are your thoughts on his run?
I would have loved to seen the other string universe, the multiverse, I guess, where he doesn't have that year and a half he almost lost because of his dealing with his neck. It was either completely out or hampered or returning from it, because really you have his career before that, like that 2-year period, and then you have the 3.5 years basically end of Overgeneration and then into Maximum. And we look at that 3.5 year period. I mean, you look at the matches that he has been in, both as a singles, a tag wrestler, and multi-man stuff, and he puts himself together. Like, if you want to take a sample of what Dragongate was during the era change, the change from the Okamura presidency to the Kaito presidency, I feel like Kaito Ishida is probably the person you pick up, and you can, through his career, you can understand what Dragongate went through over those years.
For me, he's a guy who constantly over-delivered, and it's amazing to think, Yamamura, in essence, hasn't exactly wrestled a ton of matches over the last 5 years, and I think Yamamura, to some degree, still casts a shadow over Kaito Ishida, and the idea of him moving to GLEAT is intriguing to me, because I don't know if that's going to make it better or worse, but I was looking back at my notes, looking back at my old reviews today. Ishida debuts alongside Yamamura singles match on September 11th, 2015. And what I had forgotten is that they are placed into Overgeneration, which forms in October of 2015. They're in a unit a month into their careers. Did you remember this?
Yeah, I knew it was quick. I didn't know it was like a calendar month. They basically, because Overgeneration was started, and I guess we probably, seeing that 7 years ago, probably should talk a little bit about why Overgeneration would do this for people who weren't around in the existence of Overgeneration. Overgeneration was taking the original generation of Torimon and affiliated wrestlers, Shima, Dragon Kid, and Gamma, and having them team up with the stars of this generation and next generation, with an emphasis on the next generation. So they picked them up very quickly. I knew that they did it because of the concept of Overgeneration, but I didn't know it was like less than a month.
Yeah, so they're in when Overgeneration forms, which is that October 8th, 2015 Korakuen Hall. On that show, before the main event angle in which Overgeneration forms, there is a tag match on that show, and it's Ryo Saito and Yamamura against Jimmy Susumu and Kaito Ishida. And this is a match that, for reference, I went 3 3/4 on in real time. And it was one of those where, we're coming off of El Lindemann. And was there a debut at the end of 2014, or was Lindemann the guy
No.
that would have debuted before them?
No, it would have gone. Let me see how well I can do this from memory.
Yeah, I'm
here.
gonna pull up your spreadsheet, but you try to do it from memory.
All right. So, of course, Yamamura and Ishida debuted in the same match in 2015. 2014, El Lindemann might have been at 2013. He might have been a little bit before
Lindemann
then.
was August of 2014. I know that by heart.
Okay, so you had Lindemann, 2013. I guess technically you would call UT a 2013.
Yes.
And then 2012 was Ryosu Shimizu. Or was he technically 2011?
So no, he was. Going millennials onwards, UT and Shimizu were 2013. Lindemann was 2014. Yamamura and Ishida were 2015. So I was right. There was nobody in between Lindemann and then Yamamura and Ishida, and then the class of 2016 follows.
Yeah. So like you talk about this, it's worth like talking about these generations and groups. Like there's the Trueborn era, there's the next era, there's the cursed class of 09 and like that. And you kind of in a way end up being like affiliated so tightly with the people around you whenever you debut with. So it was something that it was kind of remarkable in 2015, now that you've like said like the years and like all this, because UT was left on a lurch. Shimizu at that time was already in. If he wasn't, Die Hard still existed.
He was in Die Hard. When Yamamura and Ishida debuted, this was around the time that Shimizu was getting his ass beat on shows. This was Dangerous Gate 2015 is the show where he forgot his gear, and Shima made him pay for that in front of a live pay-per-view audience.
That's right. Yeah. So it's something that they were given the opportunity within the first month, really, because of Overgeneration, to make an impact, and it took them a while, really, to, other than being like, oh, the rookies are teaming with Punch Tominaga and El Lindemann, because that's what Overgeneration was at that time, and doing like openers and stuff for a while.
That's exactly it. They have this great match in October of 2015, and I remember the finishing stretch of it pretty well, which is a peculiar thing. You think about the thousands, if not, and this will make me sick to my stomach when I say it out loud, but the tens of thousands of Dragongate matches that we've watched over the years, and for some reason I can pretty well recall the finishing stretch of this match. And it seemed like, okay, we're off to the races. Dragongate has 2 new guys that they've always had a reputation for building these new guys up pretty fast. We'll see what happens to them. And as I go through my notes, nothing substantial happens for the rest of 2015, and nothing substantial happens for most of 2016. He is a bottom of the card dweller who is the least important guy in a unit and Overgeneration with, Punch Tominaga, Gamma, and other rookies. He is the designated lost post there of the lost post. And it's not until Final Gate 2016, which, do you remember that match off the top of your head, what Ishida did at Final Gate 2016?
Well, that was Mochi Fuji wanting to kick their... Well, so basically, for the first 15 months of their career, they were basically said, hey, you go team in this unit because that's the purpose of this unit. They showed up and basically mirrored gear and tights and entrance capes, because that was the thing of Overgeneration. We're just gonna leave that hanging case. We're just gonna leave that one hanging.
That's for a different podcast. If that caught your eye, that's for a different podcast. We'll discuss Overgeneration's capes, and apparently we have to talk about Yuki Yoshioka's dick at some point. The amount of feedback we've got on that has been mind-blowing, so we'll table those for a separate episode.
But basically, you have these 2 guys, because at this point, you really do consider Yamamura and Ishida as one entity that just kind of existed, and until the veterans just got angry about this, like going like, you've been here for a year, what are you accomplishing, what are you doing, where's your fight? And then basically Don Fuji and Masaki Mochizuki going into Final Gate's like, all right, you're having a match with us, we'll see what kind of fight you have. And it listing those 2 names in that context, that should tell everyone what kind of match that was.
I wrote in my review for this, all the rage right now belongs to the new crop of rookies, meaning the class of 2016. So Yoshioka, Hyo, Ben-K, and Shun Skywalker. I said all the rage right now belongs to the brand new crop of rookies, and rightfully so. But this was a nice reminder that Ishida and Yamamura still exist and that they have a bright future ahead of them. We were at the point of Ishida and Yamamura are reminding you that they still exist when this match took place. And I had blocked this out of my memory. I completely forgot about this. But Mike, what do we talk about when we talk about 12/1/16? That's a date that means something to you. If you've listened to the show for a long time, you know that date. 12/1/16, what happened?
That is the match with the entire class of 2016 versus the oldest members of the Dragongate roster, and that was a whole bunch of 40 and 50-year-old men beating the crap out of men in their teens and 20s.
Do you remember that on the undercard of that show, there was an Ishida versus Yamamura singles match?
That's right, because that's what brought the five guys out to make the challenge. It was like, well, we saw that up there. Now we want to make our own claim.
I had completely forgotten about this. Saw it on Cage Match today. Went, that doesn't sound familiar. Let me take a look at this. 12/1/16, Ishida versus Yamamura. Here is my review for this match. I say, and I quote, "You can't win them all. Ishida and Yamamura are both very young in their career, especially factoring in the shockingly low amount of singles matches they've had, but this was not a good match. There was no chemistry here. It's not that this was terrible or offensively awful like the Shingo versus Gamma disaster from last December, but this wasn't a strong match. A star and 3/4. Now, I have not watched this match in 6 years. I have not seen this since it aired. I am dying to get my hands on this to know if this is really a star and 3/4 match, or if for some reason 17-year-old Case was just particularly grumpy that day, which there's a very realistic chance I was because I was 17. But the point stands, on a night when Shun Skywalker and Ben-K and Yoshioka and all hail Katsumi Takashima, they made their mark in Korakuen Hall. They positioned themselves at the future, and Ishida and Yamamura shit the bed on the undercard.
And it's something that, like, at this point, and really given how at least like Hyo, Shun, and Ben-K, like, they were around for a while before this match too. Like, it was something that this wasn't like a, oh gosh, we're now seeing how 2015 is doing versus 2016. Like, Ben-K was in Summer Adventure Tag League that year. So like, they were getting passed up in real time with a 9-month head start.
Well, they were in Summer Adventure Tag League, but it was Ishida and Yamamura together. They worked non-televised matches and they lost all of their matches.
Yeah, and it's, it's something that really, the things that really starts changing for them, it took them until 2017, at least for Yamamura's part. Ishida still has a lot more trials and tribulations before he gets to where things start to take off.
So this is the important part. This is why I say that Ishida still lives in Yamamura's shadow, because what happens is the calendar turns to 2017. They end their year with that Mochi Fuji match. All of a sudden they have some momentum, and they come into Osaka, second show of the year, and Ishida hurts his neck and he's out 5 months. And this is compounded on the fact that Masato Yoshino would get hurt the next week and would miss a bunch of time. I think there was a third injury. Maybe it was Gamma that got hurt also. And all of a sudden the roster is depleted. And February 4th, 2017, who steps up but Takahiro Yamamura? And with the snap of Shima's fingers, practically, Yamamura became this made guy, a singular star-making performance in one night, the 20-minute time limit draw with Big R Shimazu in match number 2, and then Shima and Mochizuki stepping aside and letting those two wrestle in the main event in their place. That is on the Dragongate Network. All of the shows from 2017 are on there. February 4th, Korakuen Hall. That is, in a weird way, one of the most important shows of, at the very least the last 10 years, but maybe in all of Dragongate history. And Ishida's nowhere to be found. His partner laps him. And when Yamamura takes off, he takes off immediately. And he becomes the guy that people thought he was going to be. Jay said it, not on the most recent episode that dropped this week, but the last time we talked to him, Yamamura was the last guy that he went all in on. And Jay has seen them come and he's seen them go. You know, he was there for Shingo's debut. He was there for Hulk's debut. He was there for Tozawa's debut. He's been there for all of them. And he, along with the powers that be in Dragongate, saw something in Yamamura that said, if everything goes right, this guy is going to be the future of Dragongate. Unfortunately, as we know, everything did not go right. And it's amazing to think during that time away how much further Yamamura progressed and moved past Ishida, only for Ishida to come back in 2017. And this is what I noticed as I was going through my notes, was once he comes back from that neck injury, and this is not a very common thing in wrestling, but once he comes back, Ishida puts himself in a position to succeed, and he has some really strong matches in the summer of 2017. Notably, there's a six-man. It's Eita, Ishida, and Yamamura versus Benkei, Big R Shimizu, and Kotoka. 5-unit survival race from Cork and Hall. Again, that is on the Dragongate Network as well. And I have in my notes that, you know, this was a big-time match, you know, with Yamamura and Eita and Benkei being pushed to the moon. And Kaito Ishida really made his presence felt here. And from there, we start to see what would become modern Kaito Ishida, the tail end of Overgeneration, into what would become Maximum in 2018.
Yeah, and it's something that I always forget that Yamamura was around by the time Ishida did. Because, like, the neck injury, that was something that it was like 5 months out, but there was stuff around it for time, like sandwiching it the entire time. Like, I think, like, I remember hearing stuff in 2016, but like people are like, oh yeah, or like a show got announced, like Kaito Ishida has been pulled for the show due to a neck injury or something like this. Like, it was an ongoing concern, but I didn't realize that he came back and Yamamura was healthy.
Yes, yeah. So summer of 2016, Ishida misses a number of shows because of injuries, and he's never exactly been a pillar of health. We talk about Dragon Kid, who has had his injuries but is now in a remarkable shape. We talk about Susumu. We talk about Genki. These are guys that haven't missed a match in 25 years. Ishida has never had that reputation, so he starts to deal with that injury in the summer of 2016, works through it. Beginning of 2017, he gets hurt. He misses, 6 months essentially, comes back in June, and then is back full time by World. And from there, that's what we see. Is we see a little glimpse of Ishida and Yamamura together. And that's the crazy thing, is again, we associate these two guys with one another, but it's almost like, I don't know if placebo effect is the right word, but we really don't have a lot of these guys teaming together, because Yamamura gets hurt in October. So, like you said, there's 3 months of these guys healthy and past young boy status. And it's just such a shame that we didn't get more of that.
Yeah. And it's something that, it's very hard, especially considering, like, when you talk about the Dragongate dojo in a lot of ways, because until like, Case, I don't know if you still have my spreadsheet up. There is basically this time period after the next class in 2008, 2009, up until the class of 2016, where I wouldn't say it's anemic, and it's still an output that I think that other companies would salivate over, but it was something that you get 1 or 2 guys. So the fact that there was 2 at once and debuting at the same time, it's something that, like, yeah, no, it's silly in retrospect, given that probably I would guess 30 times they were in the ring together, but they're just forever linked, because after one guy a year, we got 2 all of a sudden at the same time.
Yeah, cage match shows, just matches where they're in the ring with one another, and this is teaming and this is wrestling each other. Dark matches included 87 times, and that feels wrong. It feels like this should be like a Shelley and Sabin type deal, where they're destined to do this forever, and maybe they go their separate ways, but they always come back. And it wasn't the case. And that is, the unfortunate thing about Yamamura. And it's weird. I think about it sometimes, just as the day goes by, of, he's so lucky to survive 2 life-threatening wrestling-related injuries, and it's such a bummer, because when the book on Dragongate is written, and a chapter, is done on the what ifs, because I'm going to just crib that straight from the Bill Simmons book of basketball, because I think that's the best chapter in that book. The Dragongate what ifs. Yamamura's got to be a top 5. Just what if this guy's career plays out differently? Because I think we really missed something there. And for as much as I like Ishida, and we'll get back to him in a second, if Ishida goes away in 2017, let's just say this situation happens, but it happens 5 years earlier, we're not sitting on this podcast in 2022 going, God, what could have been with Kaito Ishida?
Yeah, when you bring up like the top 5 thing, what ifs, I immediately then was like, all right, then number 1, of course, Split doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's number 1. Number 2, Magnum doesn't go to dust. I think that's fair to say, Magnum, given like that. Then you're like getting to like a point of things where Yamamura, like when he was debuted, this was back, and this will really blow like some really newer fans' minds. I read the last time we even referred to this on iHeartDG. There used to be bios, and Yamamura's bio, and I went in while this happened. I was like, I was wondering where this all happened from, and I saw, I was like, oh, where it translated from. And it was like citation, and the big one was Yamamura considers Shima a second father.
Yeah,
like this was a kid that basically egos, whatever, not getting in the way case, and let's just say that mom and dad stay together for the family. Yamamura is probably main eventing world.
Oh God, if he stays healthy, I don't see any way that's not happening. I mean, that's a guy who, if he stays healthy through 2018 and beyond, I think it's realistic to say a lot of Masato Yoshino's retirement would be based around bestowing the company onto Yamamura. I mean, this is the way he was talked about. And again, I always listen to Jay very carefully when he talks about Yamamura, because he was just on our podcast, and I love Jay, and I say this with love. He's not exactly the most excitable person in the world, especially when it comes to Dragongate, because like I said, he's seen it all. But there is a tone and a reverence that he speaks with Yamamura that is just not there for some guys. And it was that way for a reason. With Shima, to go back to your point, there's a reason that Yamamura fucking DJs on Gleat shows. And it's because there is a certain debt of gratitude that these people feel like they owe this kid because of what he could have been. And it's no one's fault that he got injured, but we're in this position now where it's like, okay, how else can we use this guy if he can't wrestle, because we still want him around?
Yeah, and the reason why when you talk about Yamamura is from day one they were inexorably linked. And while we get into the fall of 2017 and Yamamura's tragic injury, that's when things really started to get going for Kaito Ishida, whereas he became the sole bright spot of Overgeneration.
To put a pin in this, they could have been Shingo versus Hulk for the new generation.
Easily.
Yes.
Yeah, no. And now, as we always said, clearly Yamamura, big ace babyface. Ishida is the monster heel. There you go. Off the races for 50.
So, like you said, Overgeneration winds down. It's this painful unit. We're now existing by, summer of 2018 in this post OWE split where Natural Vibes 1.0 is going on. We're in the midst of the Antios run. And the only real bright spot in the company is Maximum, which is Masato Yoshino, Naruki Doi, Jason Lee, and some combination of Big Ben, depending on who had turned heel and who hadn't at this point. And Dragon Kid and Ishida find themselves without a unit, and they begin knocking down Naruki Doi's door, saying, "Hey, you got to let us into Maximum. Hey, we want to team with you guys. Hey, Maximum's really cool. You should let us wrestle with you guys." And Doi and Yoshino kind of no-sell them for a little bit, and they're not entirely sold on it. And they go through a number of matches where they wrestle against one another, and then they start teaming together, and then they join the unit. And we see over the last half of 2018, you get this really special time in Maximum where it's Yoshino and Doi and Jason and Dragon Kid and Nishida, and you get Pac coming into the company. And At this point, now we're dealing with RED instead of Antios, and you've got Shun Skywalker and Ben K really starting to take shape, and they're starting to understand who they are. And now things are clicking. And one of the notable things is that Kaito Ishida is really leading this charge. And he's a guy who, like I said, he has no 4-star matches with me in 2016. He's got a handful in 2017. And then by 2018, like, all right, he's in some big matches. He's in Dragongate matches, and he's delivering, and he's the focal point of some big Korakuen matches. And it all feels like it's starting to pay off. This is when he is becoming a guy, for a lack of a better term. And it's all of this work that he did in Maximum, which I think will go down as one of the stronger points of his career at the end of 2018 into 2019, which we've talked about before with him in the rookie ranking tournament, the match with UT, and then the match with Shun Skywalker, which we've talked about on this podcast recently. But if you have any thoughts on it now, I'd love to hear them.
So, going through the end of Overgeneration into him joining Maximum, I had to pull up this match. And again, the Overgeneration show will come, but just to get a sense of where Ishida ended up becoming in the pecking order, Dragongate is the last elimination to end Overgeneration, as he should. But Kaito Ishida gets the big falls over Yasushi Kanda, gets the first fall over Yasushi Kanda, and then he eliminates Sakashi Yoshida in this match, going into the finishing stretch. So it's something where even in the summer, before they started doing the Maximum begging series, and it just continues into a really strong fall, which we talked about in our Rookie Ranking League episode, that he was someone, along with a lot of the younger part of the roster, that were putting things together in a way that when 2019 hit, things were off to the races, and especially off the races for Kaito Ishida, as this is when we're entering his peak, right?
I've mentioned this podcast a number of times. It was recorded 3.5 years ago, and I still think it's relevant to Dragongate in its current landscape. But I recorded a podcast with Alan Forel, our friend over at Pro Wrestling Torch. This might have been the first show that I did for him on the Torch. That's besides the point. I'm just now thinking about that, though. And we talked about how this promotion that we've loved, with Shingo and Shima and Tozawa as our guys, was transitioning into something else. And because so many people had fallen off of just even casually paying attention to Dragongate from the end of 2016 into the OWE turmoil in 2018, by the rookie ranking tournament in 2019, we were really venturing into uncharted waters. And this was not a company that was on everybody's radar at this point, and especially the guys in that tournament, UT and Skywalker and Yoshioka and Nishida. These were not made guys. These were not names that people who even just browse cage match listings or maybe even, just to throw out just a comp to try to provide some context with this, your standard listener of the Voices of Wrestling flagship podcast or the Eastern Lariat podcast that Striga and Dylan do. Like, I don't think these are names that would have registered with all of those listeners. But what Alan and I had identified was, there's a changing style in Dragongate. It's not your father's Dragongate anymore. These are bantamweight style wrestlers who are throwing these heavy kick combinations and these flurries of strikes. And they're doing dives, but they're doing topes. They're not doing moonsaults off the top rope. And Ishida was one of the guys that led the charge there. He and UT and Skywalker were just different compared to what we have seen. And that really takes shape in the rookie ranking tournament that we talked about. And for Ishida, it really carries throughout the year. 2019 is a year where he does probably start to finish the best work of his career. There's a really good Ben K match in King of Gate. There is the phenomenal, as in I think one of the better, Kobe World matches of all time. We did our top 10 last week. This fell just outside of my top 10. But that Kobe World match that was Shimizu and Eita versus Kai and Yamato versus Ishida and Doi from 2019, that's a 4 3/4 star match, and the bulk of that work is done by Kaito Ishida. So once we enter the summer months, into the fall when he wins that Brave Gate title, this is a guy who has gone from preliminary undercard wrestler to a guy that showed some potential to a guy that not only capitalized on that potential and met us where we thought he would meet us, he blew past that and became this really important leader in terms of the fans' eyes, in terms of what I was watching. we're still entering these very unfamiliar passages with Shima gone and with no Lindemann and with no T-Hawk. And in a weird way, Kaito Ishida was one of those guys where I was like, I think Dragon Gate's going to be okay. Ishida's not a normal Dragon Gate wrestler, but if he can keep doing this, I think we're going to be in good hands.
Yeah, and this happened coinciding with the crowd support that started to get behind him around the rookie ranking tournament. But by the time that Gate Destiny in Osaka, his hometown, in 2019, when he won the Brave Gate against Susumu Yokosuka, it was something that it became like that show was like a full-on homecoming for Kaito Ishida when he won that Brave Gate title. And it felt like, wow, now we have like a genuine like mid-card babyface young star. Like, this is one of those like those things in Dragon Gate when when someone is starting to get made like this, like you talk about how Yamamura was made in one night. Here his was a lot slower, but when it was hard to like walk away from Gate Destiny in 2019 without any other impression about Kaito Ishida other than, all right, this is his crowning moment, now he's off the races, let's see where he goes.
You look at that Gate of Destiny card, and again, this is Gate of Destiny 2019, November 4th. This is on the Dragon Gate Network, or at least it should be. If it's not, I apologize. It's not my fault. Look at the featured matches on this show. It's Ben K versus Yoshino, which was a big match, but we assumed Ben would win. The Twin Gate match is Shimizu and Eita versus Ryo Saito and Yasushi Kanda. The Triangle Gate match is the Strong Machines versus Dragon Kid, Jason Lee, and Doi. In the undercard, outside of that really, really fun KZ and Yamato versus Mochizuki and Skywalker match, the undercard is a bunch of nothing. I mean, there's that, I see it listed here, Hyo, Kazuma, Takashi Yoshida, and Diamante versus Genki, Kness, Super Shisa, and Ultimo Dragon, which I believe I gave a dud to. I think that's one of my least favorite Dragon Gate matches over the last decade. This is a show...
That was before a lot of those people on that heel side got good over COVID.
Yes, this is... when we were still the only two Hyo fans on Earth. This is when I was the only person going, okay, I know it's fun to meme Kazuma Sakamoto, but I think he's actually very good. Nothing changed with Yoshida. You're not missing anything there. But if let's say you started listening to this podcast 6 months ago, you tuned in this year, you have probably heard us every week rave about Diamante and how we're afraid that U.S. Indies are going to watch this guy and scout him and take him away from Japan. I have a coworker who's a pretty big wrestling fan, like it really into AEW, definitely knows what New Japan is. Like that sort of stuff is on his radar. I happened to be in his office when you sent me the Ishida stuff yesterday, and I go, oh, hold on. Something in the Japanese wrestling world just happened, because he's the one person I can say that to without getting my ass kicked. And then he starts like asking me Dragon Gate questions, because he knew I was into wrestling on a deeper level, but he didn't exactly know what it was. And I started telling him, he started asking me about some guys, and I was like, look, there's this guy Diamante that if you saw him, he'd blow your fucking mind. Like he's like a base like Claudio, but he can jump around like Ricochet. Like he's just unbelievable. Anyways, there was a point in time where Diamante was a bad wrestler, and November of 2019 was that time period. So if you're new to this show, just know that the Diamante you're getting now is not the Diamante we first got when he was in Dragon Gate. The point to all of this is that Gate of Destiny was a show that, for people like you and me, was entirely built around Ishida versus Susumu for the Brave Gate belt. And not only did that match deliver in terms of being a great match, but that match delivered in terms of crowning Kaito Ishida with a title that he damn well deserved. And it was so satisfying to watch.
And then what happened less than 3 weeks later, okay?
T-Hawk and El Lindemann unveiled themselves as the Masked Demons.
Well,
sorry, that was a joke specifically for Mike. that was a scoop we got around the time of like, I heard it's from somebody that has been right about stuff before, but somebody was like, yeah, I'm being told that T-Hawk and Lindemann are under those masks, and I was like, I'm telling you now, you're incorrect, but we will see when it happens. And it turned out to be what, Ishida and Akuda?
No, it was Ishida. Well, it was Ishida and Hulk. Akuda was the fake one the next year.
Completely forgot that Hulk was under one of those as well. Wow.
Yeah, Hulk was red. Ishida was green.
Completely forgot about the Hulk thing. But anyways, go on. Fill in the timeline for me.
So RED at this time started to be followed by what were called the Red Demon Mask and Green Demon Mask, and they were guys that were in bright red jumpsuits with like just Halloween masks, and they held up the same role that that Dr. Muscle and Metal Warrior did, and Eito was saying like, "Oh, it's Christmas season. I have a whole bunch of surprises for you." And the first one was that at the Corkin, it was like it was the first Corkin that Kaito Ishida was Bravegate champion. The Green Demon Mask unmasked, and it was Kaito Ishida being furious that that Yoshino and Doi were fawning over Ultimo Dragon and defecting over to RE.
Good times were had by all. This was a really fun angle. The Ishida turn was shocking given the feel good moment that just happened in Osaka. And then he kicked off that reign with a defense against Jason Lee, which was excellent.
Yeah, because that Jason's the takeaway I have from that heel turn of Jason just looking first heartbroken and then furious when it like sunk in that Ishida played him into the like, excellent Bravegate match, and then Kaito Ishida was off to the races as we went into 2020 as Bravegate champion, and then COVID happened, and he was still Bravegate champion case, but RED at this time was changing in a lot of.
Yeah, Ishida is a really important part of 2020, and it's one of those deals that I think is going to get lost to time because nobody in their rightful mind is going to go back and watch, you know, let alone King of Gate 2020 in front of the empty arena, but the Rainbow Gate shows that followed that were dry and depressing and really hard to watch. But Ishida became this guy that with every outing, it seemed like he was doing something really interesting. And I said this on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I'm glad I was able to vocalize it because I really believe it that, you know, a lot of what Dragongate does is good. I think their biggest strength is their consistency, that very rarely does anything fall below that bar of bad wrestling. And that's part of the reason I'm so worked up about this Kobe World Main Event is not only was it a rare angle that I think flopped and was bad, but it happened to be the biggest angle of the year. And it makes me want to pull my hair out, even though I've got a buzz cut. It puts me in a very stressful position. But Ishida, the way that I really look at this company is, you know, who's interesting right now? Everybody's good. The baseline roster is good. Who's interesting? And Ishida in 2020 was that interesting guy where whether it was Genki Horiguchi at Champion Gate, which will probably go down as the last great Genki Horiguchi singles match, or whether it was Yosuke Santa Maria at Dangerous Gate for the Brave Gate belt, which is a crazy underrated match. That match was insane. And there was a real moment where it looked like Maria might win the belt and Ishida hung on. Or obviously the Kaisuke Okuda feud, which you and I lost our minds over at the time, and rightfully so, because for that calendar year, that was the best feud in wrestling. Ishida show in and show out was the guy. And it was at a time where, you know, I was just really burnt out on heel Eita, and I wasn't feeling like he was capable of leading a heel unit. He got saved when Pac came in, Pac exited, and then all of a sudden, Ishida became this far more interesting figure than Eita. And I was sitting here on this podcast going, wait a minute, why is this not Ishida's unit? Why is Ishida not wrestling for the Dream Gate? Why is he not in these main event belts or these main event matches? I think the Brave Gate belt might be beneath him with the way he's performing compared to the way that Eita's performing. And it all, you know, comes to a head with the Toriumon versus RED match at the end of the year that Ishida's in. It's a 5-star match, but his 2020 top to bottom is the best year of his career, and it just happened to happen in a hellscape.
Yeah, and if we're going to like, and this is a wild thing to do right now, I struggle to think of people who had a better COVID 2020 than Kaito Ishida, like especially given the difficulties, especially in 2020 COVID. Like, especially in Japan, no one was doing stuff as interesting as Ishida versus Okuda. In America, it was a real mixed bag. There's an argument to be made that through the Okuda feud and then going into the end of Toriumon versus RED, that Kaito Ishida might have been the best wrestler in COVID conditions in 2020.
So I'm looking at my SFM 50 from 2020, and he finished 14th for me. I'm sorry, I think he finished 14th total. He finished 14th total. My number one Dragon Gate wrestler was a guy who, as I'm looking at my list, and I wouldn't have been able to pull this with a gun to my head. I had to look at my notes and make sure that this was accurate. My number one wrestler in 2020, I voted him most outstanding, and I voted him Flair Thez. And that man was Naruki Doi.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Completely rewrote the narrative about him as Dreamgate champion.
Completely forgot. If you look at Doi's 2020, he's in the 5-star Toryumon versus RED match, and then he's in my next 3 top Dragon Gate matches: Doi versus KZ, Doi versus Eita, Doi versus Susumu. And then throughout the year, he's in a litany of great multi-man matches. I've got him at 12 matches at 4 stars or higher, with 1 5-star match in 2020. So I didn't come on this podcast to praise Naruki Doi, but here we are.
There we are. And that's concluded 2020. At the end of the feud, Okuda would take the Brave Gate title. And then the remainder of his time in Dragon Gate, I feel like it's kind of the end of RED, working tags, kind of just being the number 2 to Eita, and then the 2 of them getting kicked out of the unit on January 12th, 2022, and kind of their wilderness going into Gold Class.
Yeah, I think the last year and a half of Ishida's run can really be marked as this point where you and I were both going, okay, what's next? What's the next big thing for Ishida? And I don't think we ever got that. Again, his peak is going to be him versus Skywalker, champion in Osaka last year. For me, it was a 4 3/4 star match. It was the exact match that I was hoping for, in the sense that it was the match that Skywalker needed during his Dreamgate run. It was the match that Ishida needed to establish himself worthy of a Dreamgate challenge, and it built off of their 2019 rookie ranking tournament final match. So it was just a perfect storm of things I wanted, and a really near perfect match. And it's not like this guy was de-emphasized. Again, he was, challenging for the Twin Gate belt at Speedstar Final last year, that brilliant Shimizu and Susumu versus Ishida and Sakamoto match. And then, throughout the year, he's maybe not in the most important matches, but he's in a number of those RED versus Masquerade matches. He's always around. He was always doing something, to reuse this term. He was always doing something interesting. But you and I were both waiting on what that next big thing was going to be. And for a moment, it looked like Gold Class, and then his chemistry with them fizzled, and you and I will be left with that ellipses, or that question mark, that what's next for Kaito Ishida. It might be GLEAT, it might be kickboxing, it might be opening a restaurant. I don't know, but the conclusion of his Dragon Gate career is ultimately unsatisfying, because it feels like he was capable of accomplishing more.
Yeah, and it felt like that he's someone that, I'm of the belief that really wrestlers, like, your 30s are really where everything comes together. He wasn't even at his prime.
No.
Like, that's the thing that gets me. It's like, oh no, this guy really, like, was, like, adding to stuff, and, like, you could tell, like, if you were watching stuff, like, even within, like, a year-long time period, like, you'd be like, okay, he's progressed and changed like that, and at least in a Dragon Gate ring for the future. I don't anticipate, like, I don't think 3 years from now he's going to show back up, but that sucks. And that's something that I think that I again wonder, when, like, everyone was kind of like, all right, he's on the way out, we got to kind of get stuff going here, because that's the only way now, in retrospect, that July Corkin angled now.
It's disappointing. I really would have liked to have seen him lead his own unit. I just want to know what that would have looked like, because I believe he was talented enough to do it. I believe he was charismatic enough to do it. But there's a part of me that, could be sold on the idea that, hey, if he leads a unit, it's going to flop. And I'm about 95% sure it would have worked, but I think with him, there was a risk there, and that's very intriguing to me, and that's something that I would have liked to have seen played out. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen, and we'll see what that next step is. Again, if I were a betting man, my money would be on the Gamma retirement show on August 14th, and then moving into a position in GLEAT, but I do not know for sure. I have not heard anything from anybody that has had recent contact with him, and we'll see where it goes. But a fascinating 7-year career, somebody who left his mark in the moment, somebody that I think will be remembered in certain matches and moments historically, whether it's, the Twin Gate match from 2019, the Skywalker Dreamgate Challenge, the unveiling of him being the Green Demon mask. Those are all really important things, at least in the history of Dragon Gate for me. And although this departure is not only not what I was expecting, but not what I wanted, I think history will be very kind to the 7 years that he spent in Dragon Gate.
Yeah, there's going to be someone like a decade from now that's going to rediscover his 2020 and
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wrestlers in the world right now that could watch what Kaito Ishida does and they could learn a lot from him. So if his name being in the news cycle for whatever reason gets people interested in his work, even though he's leaving Dragon Gate now, I look at that as a positive. I dread what's going to be in the Observer this week. Who knows who was telling Dave what? And maybe this is an unnecessary sideswipe, but I'm thinking about it now as I sit here to maybe wait for the podcast next week, depending on what Dave says, and we can try to vet him if he goes buck wild, given sources that don't know what they're talking about. We'll see. I'm paranoid about it now because I really like Dave, I really respect Dave, but he's missed the mark repeatedly this year, and this is a bases loaded situation for him to miss the mark and hit a false grand slam. So we'll see what happens there.
I'm willing to guess he's going to go down on 3 strikes on it.
I think I just have a feeling there's going to be some batshit stuff in the Dragon Gate section this week, and if he's no matter what, we'll try to verify what he says. But I would urge caution and common sense, and remember who has been right about everything this year. By the way, I should note M3K challenging for the Triangle Gate belt at Ultimo's 35th anniversary show. Who fucking told you that 2 months ago? I told you what the Triangle Gate story was. I laid it out spot for spot. The only thing I got wrong was that Peros at one point had a single defense against Natural Vibes on a house show. That is the only part of this plan from March onwards that I was incorrect about. We had Jay back us up on the Nozawa stuff earlier this week. We have been right about Dragon Gate stuff this year, and Dave has not. And I feel like that's relevant to say with a story this big where things could go so awry so fast.
Well, Case, you're pretty confident about feeling right about things. Let's do our preview and predictions on this final card that we have for Kobe World 2022, the Ultimo Dragon 35th anniversary celebration, and Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival 2022. If y'all have listened to the episode from Sunday, y'all would have already been aware that we did not have a full card when we had that show with Jay. So we're going to go through, and we didn't really give predictions. So we're going to go through the shows and the matchups that we have here to close out this week here. So if you're living under a rock and you're at a certain point here, Kobe World Weekend is this weekend. It kicks off on the 30th. It will be at 4 p.m. local time. That's 3 a.m. on the East Coast. 12 a.m. on the West Coast, 8 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And match 0, Case, going up on YouTube. Open the Brave Gate, number 1 contender, Battle Royal, Genki Horiguchi, Sachiyoko Boy, Problem Dragon, Punch Tominaga, UT, Super Shenlong 3, Isha Nahashi, the returning Ryo Fuda, who was announced returning at this week, SB Kento, and Ho Ho Loon. We know Jay is pulling for a Ho Ho here, Case. Who are you feeling about in this?
I should note real quick, Mike and I are splitting coverage on voicesofwrestling.com. I will be reviewing this Ultimo 35th anniversary show. Mike will be taking Kobe World the following day. I am going to do everything in my power to watch this show live and to have a review up before Kobe World. I can't make any promises, but I will see what I can do. This is a very busy weekend for me in my job, but we'll see what happens. But as for the opening Battle Royal, first of all, what a fun bunch of guys. I'm into this. I normally don't like titles being decided, or number 1 contenderships rather, being decided by Battle Royals, but this is a fun group of guys. And given the long-term story that's being told, and if you're paying attention, sort of the disintegration of Z-Brats, I would once again put my money on SB Kento coming out of this, and SB Kento challenging for the Brave Gate title at some point this weekend.
Yeah, I could see that logic, that he definitely is the person in this matchup that is at least highest station currently on the roster. Ho-Ho, I mean, it's just a nice story. You know,
It would be great because I think with the right match, either against Dragon Dia or Hyo, I think Ho-Ho would deliver in that spot. It would be a very nice story if Ho-Ho won this match.
Yeah, I'll pull for UT here. I mean, he's like the other person other than SB Kento who's much too big of a name for this kind of match, you know? So, UT versus Dia, that's fast.
Let me throw a name at you as just tell me if you think there's a realistic chance they could be the final man standing in this battle royal. Do you think Super Shenlong has any chance of winning?
I think that Super Shenlong 3 has a better chance of winning than most others that we have not.
Better chance than Fuda. Better
Yes.
chance than Sachihoko Boy.
Easily.
God willing, a better chance than Punch. Are we on the same page there?
Right.
Better chance than Problem Dragon. Better chance than Genki. Better chance than Ishin.
Right. Then you're getting to the other three that we've already talked about. UT,
Yeah, and I would go some order of probably SBK, UT, Ho-Ho, and Shenlong, but I don't think you can rule out Shenlong here.
No, I think we could rule out the other 6, but those 4 are the ones that I would look at as the people that you could put in a Brave Gate match the next night and not be embarrassed. The official opener is Gold Class versus Natural Vibes KZ, Shimizu and Strong Machine J versus Minoura, Doi, and Minorita. Hey, we're getting the Minorita act in Kobe World.
This is going to be awkward, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see that they let Minorita get wins when he's clearly the fall post. So I think it's...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, but with Minoura going to main event the next night, he has to win.
Who would have thought 6 months ago that Strong Machine J would arguably be in a more favorable position than Coach Minoura at Kobe World?
It's the one that I don't expect people to reject, at least, you know?
By the way, I was right about Strong Machine J as well. That's just a personal victory because I was real like, oh, I hope this works out. I'm putting a lot of stock into this guy. And then he breakdanced in Cork and Hall, and I felt really good about myself for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Do you really have a prediction for that match?
No, I think Minoura's got to win, and he's probably going to pin Strong Machine J as an act of defiance against me.
Yeah. Speaking about acts of defiance.
Well, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, what's up?
First of all, that was very inviting. Thank you for that. It just made me feel good. KZ, no big matches at Kobe this year. Do you make anything of that? I mean, I said to you, I don't remember if I said this privately or if I said this on the air. What this card is missing is special singles match challenge KZ versus Takuma Fujiwara, and that not happening sucks. That is the type of match that was needed on one of these shows, and I'm really bummed that it's not.
Yeah, I think that there's a better propensity for a special singles match and stuff that's not announced for the 31st. But I would have had, because KZ and UT, I was figuring that they'd probably defend Gurk and Mask's mat belts. You know, that's what I was figuring.
That's a good point. I forgot they had those. That seems realistic. Although we don't have a Twin Gate match for World yet.
Yeah, we don't have one for World. We have one for Ultimo. We don't have one on the second night.
Yeah, that's strange, right?
You would think that something would be set up, you know,
they got to go back to one night. The Yoshino thing was very defensible. I got it. Even the Ultimo thing, the logistics behind why they're doing it, I don't have a problem with that. But I can't handle another year of 2-night booking. And I'm trying to think just off the top of my head. So it's 2022 now. So next year, 25 years will be 1998. 15 will be 2008. Those don't seem like big anniversaries as far as I can tell. So maybe we'll be in the clear, assuming that, Yamato doesn't retire or something.
Yeah, no, this is one of the few ones because you would probably do something for Dragon Gate's 25th anniversary, right? They're doing it here. So there's not a lot of available big enough names, basically.
Yeah, that's good. But no, we've got this part of my French with this fucked up 6-man tag. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, I had a really great transition that you pulled me out of.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's totally okay, totally okay. Yeah, we have the team that's going after my heart, and Kenichiro Arai, Gurukun Mask, and the Bodyguard versus Takashi Yoshida, Benkei, Madoka Kakuta. So we do have like the three biggest guys on the roster going against the absolute sleaze lords.
So we're obviously going to get a lot of Benkei and Bodyguard stuff here, but my fear is that Kakuta's going to hit a discus lariat on Ariken and it's going to break Ariken in half.
Yeah.
There's a better chance that Ariken is broken in half than there is that Punch Tamanaga wins the Bravegate Battle Royal.
Oh, like by measures of magnitude. Like like when they talk about like exponential stuff, it's like by this time it's when this thing is this exponentially small, it's the size that you of a Saint of grain. It's like Punch Tamanaga is that Saint of grain. Kenichiro Arai just eating a hand of God and like dislocating something. That's Mount Everest. Grain of sand, Mount Everest.
Well put, Mike.
All right, the Bravegate match. Dragon Dia defends against Hyo. The winner will face the winner of the Battle Royal on night 2. Let's just talk about both the Bravegate stuff here. Do you think Hyo's going to upset Dragon Dia?
I'm gonna say no. I would be very cautious about putting any titles or importance on Z-Brats right now. I think for as strong as this unit is, there's a lot of signs pointing towards August and September being massive, a time of massive reformation for this unit. And because of that, I think Dia retains here.
Yeah, I mean, like, Case, you're taking all your victory laps here. I was the Hyo guy.
You, more than anybody else ever, have been the Hyo guy.
My boy has done it. He's in a title match at Kobe World, baby. But just like looking at how everything's set up with like the Battle Royal and all of this, I look at the Battle Royal and really not a lot. Like Hyo will have a Hyo match, but like people that I'm like, okay, that could be really interesting. Like how you were talking about with like UT or Shenlong or Ho Ho. Like you have that there. Whereas with Dia, you put Dia in against 7 out of the 10 guys in that Bravegate match. Let people figure out which ones I think won't be that. And you know you're going to be getting a match on the much higher end of that. And yeah, as you're saying, Z-Brats is looking to shake up. The August Corkin is traditionally called Scandalgate. Okay.
Absolutely. So you look at their history this year, Hyo and Dia have wrestled twice, once in King of Gate, once in Hyo's hometown for the Bravegate. Both of those matches ended in a double countout. So given Hyo's history of doing that, he has the edge on Dia here. I think Dia gets his win back. And then we're put in a position where, for me, it would be Dia versus SB Kento, which has happened twice this year, and Dia has won both of those matches. I think there's a realistic chance he could go 3-0. Let me ask you, what do you think there's a realistic possibility that if SB Kento wins the Battle Royal and then Hyo can win the Bravegate, do you think there's any chance they wrestle in a singles match at Kobe World?
I mean, the only reason you do that is to show that it could happen, right? Like, it's a match that does not need to happen. Like, it's a cute thing, but it does not.
I think it'd be very unrealistic, but I also can't rule it out. I think there's going to be... There's just... I would be prepared for a lot of weird Z-Brat stuff over the next month and a half, and Hyo versus SB Kento would fit that bill.
Yeah, no, for sure. Then we have Kakatore's 20th anniversary match. We knew who Kakatore was teaming with. It is his former, Taro Nohashi was his classmate, but it is Taro Nohashi and Jinsei Senzaki and Michinoku Pro, of which where Kakatore worked in between the end of Toryumon and El Dorado and returning back into Dragongate, and the 3 people he's drawn on the other side. A lot of power fighter teams on this Ultimo 35. We had Yoshida, Benkei, and Kakuta. Now it's Don Fuji, Shuji, Kondo, and Toru Owashi. Why aren't we getting like the 500 kilogram challenge happening here? Reinforce the ring with these 2 trios.
Yeah, this is this is in the stretch of matches. I think the Bravegate, the Kakatore match, and then what follows, the Dragon Kid 25th anniversary, these are going to be the matches that set the tone. If the Bravegate drags and the Kakatore match is just okay, and the Masato Tanaka match is good but not great, this is a show that could very easily underwhelm. And it's going to be a very long show, and it could be a long 4.5 hours if these matches are just okay. If the Bravegate match hits and the Kakatore match over delivers, then Masato Tanaka just does his thing. Okay, now we're in good shape. I love the names here. I love when Nohashi shows up. I love that Fuji Kondo Awashi trio. I have hopes that this will be a very fun match, and it can really set the tone for, as crazy as this sounds, this match could set the tone for the next 6 matches.
Yeah, because we're not even at the halfway point with this match. Yeah, no, like there's enough here that honestly, I'm more confident in this match than I'm in the match coming up after that, the Dragon Kid 25th anniversary match. Dragon Kid teams with Masato Tanaka, his FNW ally versus Yamato and BB Hulk. I feel a lot more confident about match 4 than I do about match 5, to be quite honest.
I am really excited to see what Yamato versus Masato Tanaka looks like. I like Yamato in weird environments. I'm going to sit down before the show and make sure that I watch his match in Noah. It's just, Yamato, protected is not the right word, but Yamato exists within the Drangate universe solely. And to have a guy like Masato Tanaka come in, I think is very exciting. So I don't know what this match will look like, but I'm excited to see how it pans out. What do you think of Yamato and Hulk together? How do you see that shaping up?
I mean, it's remaining vestiges of the Big Six. Like those two enjoy, they're going to be on each other's teams regardless in big stakes of their affiliations at this point. So Yama Hulk coming back, I like that Tri Vanguard run towards the end of that. Like I that was like the one part of Tri Vanguard I really liked, was the teaming towards the end of it. And I think it could be fun. It's going to be like, oh, look, babyface Yamato with dastardly heel Hulk. And like, that'll be a cool image there. But to me, the story of this match is going to be, it's going to be Yamato and Tanaka. Like, if you want this match to succeed, these two have to gel.
I kind of wish it was Yamato and Dragon Kid versus Hulk and Tanaka. That would obviously make sense with Yamato and Dragon Kid being in the same unit. But I want to see Tanaka wrestle Dragon Kid.
Yeah, you have actually Tanaka and Hulk should be teaming up against Dragon Kid and Yamato. Yeah, no, because that way we also get Tanaka against both the high-end guys. Yeah. No, better team.
Like Jay had pointed out, it seemed like there was ideally supposed to be a draw and Yamato and Hulk teaming with one another, and that hasn't happened because they're in a match with Masato Tanaka. But I would rather just have the high-end team against Tanaka, who's a former Antios member, and Hulk, who is not on high-end, and then you get Tanaka wrestling Dragon Kid, which I think would be really fun. That's a miss on this card.
No, I'm totally with you on this. The Bosu 10-match series revival, if y'all didn't listen to the episode of Jay, the Bosu series is basically Konamawa Ichikawa, and he's done several of these throughout his career, where he faces against stars and he gets his ass kicked. He has famously gone against Yun Akiyama, Minoru Suzuki, Takahiro. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Yoshihiro Takayama?
Yeah, that's it. Yoshihiro Takayama. Because we were talking about Takahiro Yamamura.
Yeah, so I follow. You're good. I know who you meant.
Yeah. So the new series starts. Jay has said that it is Satoshi Kojima as his bet because X is the big meme, and the biggest meme is that no X can be bigger than Satoshi Kojima. Case, who are you feeling like is going to step in the ring with the world's weakest wrestler?
If I had done my job and prepared for this show, I would have prepared for the drop of CM Punk doing his Homicide impression when he prank called Gabe into saying that Homicide was quitting Ring of Honor, and he's talking about wrestling in All Japan, and he goes, Kojima, lariat. It would have been really funny, but I did not do that. I'm gonna say Muto just because I want it to be Muto, but Kojima seems like the safer guess. I will pop huge for either.
I kind of want to go off the board. Shiro Koshinaka is not big enough a star for this, and I think he's done it before. Who would be a really funny person to do this? I mean, the biggest thing is if Shingo Takagi shows up.
Oh, I'd lose my shit if Shingo showed up. That would be the
No,
greatest
but he
thing I've ever
shows up,
seen.
but it's completely the LIGA Shingo, right? Full entrance. He's wearing the bad tights that cover up his belly button. You know, the theme that's not as good as the other one, but it's still kind of catchy. It has to be New Japan Shingo Takagi.
Is Akira Mayada still alive?
I believe Akira Maeda is still with us. Yes.
Mayada would be fun, just because, like, I would just like to know, like, hey, whose idea was that to seemingly pay Mayada a ton of money to do this, to pay Mayada to shoot injure Konamami Chikawa, because that is what would happen.
Wikipedia actually has a recent photo of Akira Maeda from 2018. Well, that was 4 years ago. You know, he maybe had some time to heads up.
He got a little round, didn't he?
I was going to say, you don't work out as much when you're not in rings.
He all of a sudden was packing on the pounds, wasn't he? He became a heavyweight.
Yeah. Might be him and Yoshida might go one-on-one, see who be the biggest person in Dragongate ring for that week. Case, the match 7 is the Triangle Gate Championship match. I need you to compose yourself. I know that you've been taking so many laps here, and you're beside yourself.
I'm out of breath from all these victory laps on Triangle Gate booking.
Yeah, that's right. So, Parazamal de Hapan, Ada, Nasao, Rangai, Katara, Suzuki defend against M3K, Masaki, Mochizuki, Susumu Mochizuki, and Mochizuki Jr. with special task-solving referee Yasushi Kanda.
With Kanda being the referee, I just don't see a way that M3K loses. I'm going to stick with what I've been saying all along. You know, this title has bounced around all year. There's been one successful defense, which was that Peros over Natural Vibes on the June 26th house show a month ago as we're recording this. The title's bounced around all year long. I think with the goal of getting stability at Kobe World and getting stability in the form of M3K, the next night, it's going to be the winners of this match against Yamato, Dragongate, and Ben-K, and KZ, Big Boss Shimizu, and Strong Machine J. Going forward, assuming M3K have the titles, I'm going to look for, okay, can Mochizuki Jr. be protected in this position? And in a 9-man match like that, I don't see any reason why he can't be the 9th most important guy in that match, stay back, pick his spots, and make sure they look good. To me, this is an M3K win, and then they'll win again the next night.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the exact inverse of the first half of the year, Case. I think M3K, you're not going to be able to get the belts off them. You're not going to be able to, because they're going to find ways to either get a double DQ so that the title stays with the champions. Like, they're going to find ways. Yasushi Kanda is going to fast count Nosawa Rangai on this match. And yeah, like the story about the Triangle Gate this weekend between these 12 wrestlers is what position we put Mochizuki Jr. in so he can thrive. How can we, is it protecting him in that 3-way the next night? That's one way of looking at it. It's also saying this kid has literally debuted this summer, and now he's 4th from the top one show. He's probably going to be 3rd from the top on the other show. How do we make sure that people walking out of Kobe World Cannon Hall go, Mochizuki Jr., wow, he's in his 20s. He's only been wrestling for 2 months. He had 2 great performances in Kobe World. This Mochizuki Jr. kid is going to be all right. That is the goal between these 2 matches over this weekend.
If I were, go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
And it's like, and if I were a betting man, I would put all my money on Mochizuki Jr. coming out of Kobe World Week.
You look at the way these matches are laid out. You've got Kanda as the referee on the first night, which I mean, God help us. I mean, really, really help us if Kanda like sides with Peros in that match. I just don't see that happening. I think that would be counterproductive, and we would have wasted 2 months of our lives with M3K if that's the end result. I think you have a built-in opportunity there with Kanda as the referee to get M3K those titles, and then you look at the match the next night. One, I would lay that match out to make sure that Mochizuki Jr. does not have a singles encounter with Strong Machine J in that match. Anybody else, I think he can be carried and walked through in case anything goes wrong. I would keep Mochizuki Jr. and Strong Machine J apart And then you look at that high-end team, and there's a chance that, Ben-K and Yamato have some friendly fire, and that leads to Mochizuki Jr. picking up another pinfall. It's built in right there. I don't see why they wouldn't use that.
And another reason why you wouldn't want Strong Machine J and Mochi Jr. like facing off there. First ever like real face off, like we saw how it was with the Ihashis and him. You want to keep like Mochizuki Jr., the idea second generation wrestler versus second generation wrestler. You could have them like face off briefly, but that is something that you want to come back to, and you don't want to play that card too soon.
Oh, no. I mean, you pencil that in for 2028 and you see what position they're in on that show, because they could very easily be headlining 5 or 6 years from now.
Absolutely. And Case, we spent time with Jay trying to figure out this next match. This is Ultimo Dragon's 35th anniversary match, and we knew that Hijo del Santo would be attached in this. We're like, okay, what's going to happen here? Who do we have that we can trust with this kind of scenario? And Case, we were trying to talk about it with Jay, and we didn't come to a satisfactory solution. But little did we know the satisfactory solution. We said it kind of jokingly, but it is true. Ultimo Dragon 35th anniversary match. Ultimo Dragon will face off against El Hijo del Santo.
This is cool as shit. Like,
yeah, it rules.
It's I'm so glad they're doing this.
Yeah, the only thing that you should write down for like the match rating is this ruled, and that, or beast. Just write down it's beast, and we'll move on for life.
It's beast.
I mean, you have Ultimo Dragon, who all of his health stuff, and then you have Hijo del Santo. Like the combined age in that ring might be getting close to 120.
As we've been recording, I've had a best of El Hijo del Santo compilation on my TV. It's on YouTube, on the Jack Shares Graps YouTube channel. And as I'm speaking right now, I'm watching Santo and Fuerza Guerrera wrestle in a tag match from 1983. And it is just cool to think that Santo, although he's certainly not that man anymore, is a guy that can still go. And according to Cage Match, and they could be missing some matches here, but according to Cage Match, they've never wrestled in a singles match before. This is cool. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, no, this is a match that's just gonna be like, oh wow, Ultimo and Hijo del Santo. Like it's a moment match. It's a vibes match. Like it's just gonna be awesome to see this. Like honestly, I'm glad they like have that there before the two title matches up top. Like this is like having this like right here. You're not putting Ultimo in the main event at Kobe World. You're not doing that, but you have this here, and it's gonna be something that like we'll look back at this and be like, oh yeah, Ultimo's 35th anniversary show. He faced off against Hijo del Santo.
I'm so curious to know the guys in the back that are like going to be into watching this match, because I just get the feeling that UT is pretty psyched on this. But I would love to know if this is a curtain sellout. Who cares? Who doesn't? That would just be very fun intel for me.
Yeah, it would be interesting to be like, no, I was a Blue Demon guy. No.
That would suck, because I don't want to watch Blue Demon.
Senior or junior?
No, God no.
No. Yeah, no. Who's the curtain sellout? Because yeah, UT, I could see him being like, yeah, no, I want to catch and watch this here.
UT's coming up to Santo like, do you need a second? Like, I don't, it's a long ramp. I don't want you walking down to the ring alone.
Yeah, it's a long, thin ramp. You want to have someone spot.
Because you're gonna have a cape and a bunch of other cool shit. Let me just be out there just to hang out. If you need me, let me know.
I'll have the water bottle ready for you.
Yeah. I'm very good at this.
I mean, he would have the argument with KZ, why you're out there, and it's like you let this next group happen in the next match. He opened the Twin Gate Championship match as the Kung Fu Masters. He let them do the Kung Fu Masters. You have to let UT second Santo, Hijo del Santo, right?
Well, wait. Oh, who's gonna second? Are you asking who's gonna second the Kung Fu Masters?
No. I had a really cute segue in my mind, case. I was gonna like, well, you're gonna let me do this because you let the guys in the next match do what they're doing.
I follow now. Sorry, Mike thought we were gonna record for 45 minutes tonight, and I knew he was out of his mind for thinking that. Look, the important thing here is we talked for this Twin Gate match. Jay was concerned, and he put the concern in my head that this was going to be the opening match. This was going to be on YouTube, and it was going to be in and out. It's the semi-main event. It's that for a reason. We know the history of Twin Gate matches at Kobe World. I've talked about it a lot recently. I don't see any reason why this match isn't going to join the Shingo and T-Hawk, or the Shingo and Tozawa versus T-Hawk and Eita, the Doi and Ricochet versus Tozawa and Hulk, 2019 match we talked about earlier, CK1 versus Speed Muscle. It is unfair to this match that is my expectation, but that is ultimately my expectation.
Yeah, no, this is the match that has the highest floor and the high ceiling easily on the show. And the fact that they're putting the semi-main event lets me know that they know what this match is, you know?
It's one of those matches, and this is a messed up thing to say. And, this used to happen to me in G1s, a lot of big New Japan main events, I would feel this way. A lot of big Dragon Gate matches, I feel this way. But if this match is 4.25, it's a letdown. That's just, it's not fair to them. It's not fair to me as a viewer, but that is what I'm expecting, something better than that. The floor for this is match of the year. I'm sorry, the ceiling for this is match of the year. The floor for this is like 4.5 stars.
No, I'm totally with you on that. And look at Jackie, I mean, not coming up on his 30th anniversary, semi-main eventing Kobe World. That's something that SBK can't take.
Yeah, this kid's all right, it turns out.
Yeah, I know we're hesitant about Z-Brats, like looking like Z-Brats is going to go through some stuff. As much as a Kamei fan as I am, and as much as I think Jason Lee is one of the 10 best wrestlers in the world right now, and even knowing that Shun's about to go on vacation, I don't think you take the belts off of Shun Monte at this point.
I really wish we knew what they were doing with the Twin Gate the next night, because the thing that is preventing me from saying, okay, it's going to be Jason and Jackie as the champions, and I do think the belts are going to leave Shun and Diamante sooner rather than later, but you do find yourself in this weird position. Maybe they turn it into a storyline. Dragon Gate's far more creative than I am, but if Jason and Jackie win the titles, then they win them as the Kung Fu guys, but then are they going to have to defend them as Natural Vibes? And they're maybe they have a Sambo Hall defense. It just seems like a headache that's unnecessary for your champions. So for now, I will also side with you and say Shun and Diamante are retaining.
I mean, in Kobe Sambo, they are Kung Fu masters. That means we have Natural Vibes versus Kung Fu masters.
Oh my God, that'd be fantastic. Can you imagine KZ and Strong Machine J versus Jackie and Jason for the Twin Gate belts? I would adore that.
Hey, I'm just a good idea machine, which brings us to our main event, which is not a good idea.
There you go. That's a transition I didn't cut you off for, and I followed.
So we've talked about this for the last 3 weeks. Open the Dream Gate Championship match. Kai defends against Yuki Yoshioka. The winner of this will defend against Kota Minoura, who won the Next Challenger 3-way match on Sunday at Kobe Sambo Hall. So Jay and we talked about this, and on Sunday we all three of us came to the conclusion that there's only one acceptable outcome, and that is a Yuki Yoshioka clean sweep between Kai and Kota Minoura. Has anything changed over the last 36 hours, Case?
It is not. Let me ask you, Doomsday Prepper, you live on a compound. What's your worst case scenario here?
Oh, the worst case scenario is Yuki wins and then drops it immediately to Kota.
Yeah, we're in the same position we were last year, where I said that would have been the worst thing, is for KZ to win the first night and then lose to Yamato the second night. I think it's the same story this time around. It's
just something that win then lose. It's going to have to take like a very specific wrestler actually who you could have done that with if you put them in this scenario and their position in this company. Akira Tozawa could have won and then lost, and it would have been perfectly fine. And he might have been
arguably would have been the right story to tell with Tozawa.
Right. Yeah. No, like Tozawa, like this is the only way that you can have someone win on the first night and lose is if you have the Akira Tozawa story. Outside of that, it has to be too straight one way or the other.
I think much like last year, Kai winning 2 in a row is unlikely, but very interesting if it happens. But I think the story here is going to be Yoshioka winning on a flash pin against Kai and then winning defiantly against Minoura on night 2.
Yeah, it's something where it's just like, since this became like the prospect of having D Courage stand in the ring, both of them with their singles titles belt, like they've been champions together, now they're champions of their divisions. That's such a powerful image in a company that does not end big shows like Kobe World with the heel on top. They only did it once, and within 3 weeks, they turned that heel in Shingo Takagi in 2008. And that's something that has to be kept in mind when we talk about.
Kai has been an incredible Dreamgate champion, far better than I ever thought he would. In December, I panicked. In February, I got really sweaty and I got really nervous after the Yoshida defense. But Shimizu and Susumu and the first 20 minutes of a 21-minute Shuji Kondo defense, I really liked what I saw from Kai. And I'm now in a position to where I have no doubt that come main event Ultimo's 35th anniversary show, Kai is ready, willing, and able to deliver a Dreamgate quality match in the main event of a big show in Kobe, which a year ago I would not have said, 6 months ago I would not have said. But Kai has shown me something with this run. I hope he goes out with a bang. And this is a title reign that I think we'll celebrate years from now.
Yeah, it's going to be a title reign that's going to get the Kai sticker shock. And then if someone sits down and watches all the matches, they might be like, is Kai like the most improved wrestler this year?
That's fuck, that's a good take. That is a good take. Remind me of that come December.
Oh, that sounds like an article right there, if you ask me.
Look, we're over the halfway point or just reaching the halfway point of the year. Kai versus Susumu is my match of the year. Of all of wrestling, I have not seen a better match than Kai versus Susumu this year. So, yeah, I would not have predicted that when Kai won this title.
God knows. And it was almost 7 months to the day, too, which is wild.
That was a shocking late night / morning in my parents' house celebrating Christmas. Like, hey, is everything okay? I was like, yeah. Kai won the Dreamgate belt. I'm stressed out. I gotta take a walk around the neighborhood.
Gosh, yeah, I was down visiting the other Spears compound, and I was like, oh, it's so not gonna happen. I'm not gonna. I know we made that boast. I'm not even gonna bring my equipment.
No, that's what we talked about. Was like, well, should we bring our mics home for Christmas? When we're not having copious amounts of sex, should we bring our podcast mics home for Christmas? It was like, no, we'll be okay. I'll get back to Chicago and we'll record our podcast and talk about where Yamada goes from here. And boy, did they call my bluff.
Yeah, they called both of us there. But do you have any other last thoughts about Kobe World Weekend before we get out of here?
I hope Yuki Yoshioka and his big dick have a good weekend.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm not going to say that. I almost said it, but
nope. We almost got Mike Spears after dark.
It almost got Mike's. It was almost hour 3, and that's when it gets wild. But that's going to do it. We will be back next Tuesday with, y'all know by now, we'll be back. We'll be talking about the Ultimo Dragon 35th anniversary show, and we'll be talking about Kobe World 2022. But keep your eyes peeled on voicesofwrestling.com. We have all kinds of stuff that will be going up until then. But for Case, I'm Mike. You can follow us on Twitter at OpenVoiceGate. Case is at _ in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. Thanks for listening to Open Voice Gate. We'll be back with you next week reviewing Kobe World 2022. Take care.